much for joining the Dallas Weekly to celebrate Women's History Month and our special edition. I wanted to mention that I had met you a couple months ago while your CEO, Jamie Dimon, came down for his bus tour, and you were mesmerizing when I saw you talking with him about all of the successes that you oversee. So I wanted to elaborate on that and really talk about your career and what you're doing, what you see in the future.
Oh, wonderful. I actually came from a lineage of educators from the Dallas Independent School District. My mother taught at fourth grade for 40 years. And then my other uncle also was a coach at one of the premier high schools, Roosevelt High School in the southern part of Dallas. Then he came on to be athletic director. And then my other uncle coached at Roosevelt High School. And so I knew early on that I wanted to be a teacher. And so I went on to the University of Oklahoma, and then I graduated and got my 2 certifications to teach in Oklahoma as well as the state of Texas. But I also thought that to be a highly effective educator, you really needed to have real life workplace learning and experiences. And so, which propelled me to actually get a job in the financial industry. My first job was at the time in a first bank that went on to become SCMB and Nations Bank and Bank of America. And so I've had a whole career in the financial industry from Bank of America to Citibank and now JPMorgan Chase. But I will say that once I got into banking and went back and got my MBA, that allowed me to get into the credit training program. I didn't necessarily look back because the trajectory was so promising, and it allowed me to actually become a banker. But I will tell people that I really love children. And so while I was in banking, I actually went back and volunteered in a special needs class for children.
Okay.
And I will tell you that it was probably the happiest time of my life. Because one thing about when you go into a special needs classroom, you get a chance to see the faces of children that have special needs, but they're the most happiest people in the world. And oftentimes, I think we lose sight of that. And so it's a constant reminder, and I think everybody needs to do
Absolutely. And like you were speaking to your illustrious career in managing philanthropic community efforts, you are the executive director of Global Philanthropy for JPMorgan Chase. Can you tell me what a typical day looks like for you?
Well, yeah. So, oh my God, it ranges. And so it could be partnering with our cross-line of business partners, whether they're in the commercial bank or the private bank, or working with our market leadership team members. But because I'm responsible for Texas and Oklahoma, every day is consumed with how to effectively implement and land on a robust market strategy that is really focused on addressing, I would say, the most critical and economic challenges that we see our city facing. And so we have approximately $16 billion grants under management, which requires a lot of focus and attention every day. And every day, I will say that I'm continuously thinking about scaling and impact and how we will address and solve some of those most critical problems that communities face, whether it is a lack of technical assistance and capital that's landing on small business and particularly entrepreneurs of color, whether that is solving the skills gap and ensuring that individuals are not crowded into low-skill, low-wage jobs, that we are meeting the labor market demand, that we have a population and residents are not necessarily fearing gentrification. And I would actually say that I go home every day and I actually think about how have I done enough today to address the problems for tomorrow. And so you're constantly coming in every day trying to make sure that you stay laser focused on that.
I want to segue, like based on something that you just said, like how do you have a team of people that kind of help you brainstorm, like here are the things that we need to pinpoint, things like, because there's a lot of things to tackle, if you will, when it comes to outreach.
Yeah, so we actually are led by 4 philanthropic pillars, so it's really quite narrow in our focus. And so we focus on, like I said, small business development. We focused in on financial health. We focused in on jobs and skills. And the other one is neighborhood development. So I don't necessarily have a team. There is under corporate responsibility, there are about 400 people who work nationally and globally in that. But here locally, I'm the only senior program officer just leading this body of work in this pillar across Texas and Oklahoma, although there is a program officer sits in Houston. But when you say who's like helping you, the job is not like, oh, I like this nonprofit organization. I think they do great work. Let's fund it and invest in them. It is really look at what problem you're trying to solve. So, for example, we know that there are 3 targeted neighborhoods in the southern part of Dallas, whether it's the bottom, which is over there by the zoo, whether it's the email corridor, or whether it's West Dallas. That are fear and gentrification. And we also know that in West Dallas, the city of Dallas just approved their comprehensive housing policy and their anti-racial equity audit was just approved. For 11 recommendations, the 8th recommendation, I believe, was around anti-displacement. So when you ask who else is helping you to solve it, to figure out these problems, it's really led by what we're hearing resonate from the community. They are fear and gentrification. What is an anti-displacement tool kit look like? How are we thinking about community land trust so that we can keep the affordability in the neighborhood? How are we addressing low academic achievement in communities of color? So if you lead with that, then you begin to back into your portfolio in terms of we funded a $500,000 investment to address and stand up what an affordable housing fund may look like in the city of Dallas and what this implementation look like.
I'm just like, it warms my heart. I mean, because I'm a not a native, but I'm a current South Dallas resident, and my business operates in South Dallas. I serve the South Dallas community, but I also talk about things happening in West Dallas, and also the Highland Hills area, and the area near Park Plain. So it just warms my heart to know that the halls of the great JPMorgan Chase Bank that we are talking about these very specific communities and the issues that are going on. So thank you so much for that.
And you're welcome. I mean, we all should take a village, but partnership is real. And so the other interesting focus is that there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that are out there, but being more intentional on how you are supporting nonprofit organizations that are led by people of color that are in fact serving people of color.
Yeah.
And residents in these communities understand the disparities that exist. And they will oftentimes tell you that I'm tired and fatigued about being surveyed and asked questions about what needs to be done in our communities. And we just want to see action happen. And we get tired of all these promises and plans. And so hopefully we're trying to do some good and investing in these targeted place-based strategies that hopefully can see real change happen.
Absolutely. You literally just said the S word. Like, I've heard people say, if I get more people, I know what we're talking about. We want to know. It's like, you already know. We already know what the research said. The Black and Latinx communities are not necessarily benefiting from the growth that we're seeing. You know that. So, like you said, what are you going to do about it? So, absolutely. All about that. Can you tell me, like, what positive changes have you seen throughout your career? And also, what are you doing specifically to bridge the gap and to make opportunities for women?
So first of all, I think that's a great question because we are actually seeing a shift in the leadership tables and more women and people of color in these senior roles, which is a good thing. Yet there are only 2 Black women CEOs in the history that are featured in Fortune 500 lists. That is Cassandra Brown Duckett, TIA, and then there's Rosalind Brewer of Walgreens. And so I think that we as leaders need to be very intentional about bringing others along, and that this space at the table, we must do our part as women of color to actually reach back. But I also need to say that we need to also remind those others that are seated at the table that may not necessarily look like us, that the talent is created equally, but the opportunity is often not.
Right. That's, to be put in a position to be able to have that conversation, that's really major.
Authentic conversations.
Yes. But we got to be willing to have the conversation.
And I got the voice for all of JPMorgan Chase at that table.
Right.
It needs to have more voices at the table.
Absolutely. I want to get a little bit personal. So I know that you are part of you're the chair of the Black COVID Economic Recovery Committee. And it's no question that during COVID, I mean, so many were impacted, even my business was impacted as well. And everybody had to pivot and figure out different ways, either personally, financially, whatever it may be. So can you tell me about the work that you did while being on that committee?
Yeah. I mean, first off, the council was a committee that Councilman Casey Thomas at the time put together.
Yes.
And there were various committees, and I was pleased to be the chair of the economic one. Because as a financial institution, as you just eloquently said, that we know that also wealthy people have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. And that prior to the pandemic, we knew that there was a resource gap in terms of capital landing and being deployed to entrepreneurs of color, and the access and the networks. We knew that that was a problem. And so the pandemic, as you said, exacerbated that. And so I will say that when you think about how do we solve for these big complex problems, we saw a couple of things that were happening in the city of Dallas. One, to close the resource gap, there were three organizations that actually came together to collaborate to create this Revive Dallas Small Business Relief Fund. You may have heard of them. And the fund was a collaboration between the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, the Communities Foundation of Texas, and Lift Fund to really provide relief in capital. And what it did was that they wanted to raise $5 million. They wanted to provide 200 relief loans, and they wanted to provide technical assistance to 320 plus. I will say that I was proud that JPMorgan Chase actually provided a grant of $250,000 to really actually stand up with the structure of the fund what it looked like. And we knew, and you know probably also well, is that when it came to the PPP payment, Paycheck Protection Program, that was SBA-backed loan fund to really help small businesses actually keep the workforce employed during that time. They didn't have access to that. They, the Small Business Administration money was falling and coming out. And so this fund actually was one win. Yeah, I would say that was another vehicle for others to be able to tap into. But I would even say that, even when the city of Dallas stood up their fund, 40% of the applications came in incomplete, which means that, you may not necessarily have audited financials. You may not actually have an accountant online. And so when the system is asking for all of these documents and the money's running out quickly, then you're in a panic mode. And so that was led to the aggressiveness of making sure that you have mentors and technical assistance so that you can rapidly fund the funds you're being able to tap into.
I'm so glad you spoke to that. That's something I've witnessed in our community a lot, especially with small business. It's just a small business owner thing. Period. That sometimes you don't get your taxes done on time. Sometimes you don't have the balance sheet ready to go. So it was good that you guys are cognizant of these like everyday things where people don't have like an accounting team per se, because you're just trying to get by day to day. So that's amazing work. I wanted to highlight the fact that you are also on other boards and committees as well. You are the board of director for the Dallas Museum of Art, Methodist Health System Foundation, and UT Southwestern Medical Foundation. I just want to say, for one, that with all the work that you're already doing at JPMorgan Chase and then being on all these boards, I want people to understand that takes a lot of time, personal time to invest into and then make a difference. So I know you said that you've always been inspired by children and, you always want to give back. But what really inspires you to give back the way that you do, like every single day?
I would say, I think like most people, we want to make our community better. And not just for some, but really for many. I say we want to give back because we want to do our part to make sure that we are creating a more equitably balanced city, because we talked about that, right? The disparities. I think, but it is more important for us to get back and share our experiences. Our co-head of Global Philanthropy, I think, said it best, and she just said it 3 weeks ago. Unless you have had a lived experience, you will always be learning from others. And I believe that the time is right, because there is this highly focus on the southern part of Dallas. And it was so much easier to respond to the crisis than influence intractable problems. And I will always ask myself, what side of the equation do you want to be on?
Yeah,
It's easier to respond to the crisis versus than to influence and track problems.
absolutely. I agree with that. To speak to like the influence that you have on boards, can you tell me like what you think about the importance of women being on boards?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the importance of women being on boards. This is particular, I'm not on this board, but if you are the Texas Women's Foundation board comprised of women, they come with a different voice. You can't begin to talk about child care challenges if you're not a woman.
Sure.
Can't begin to talk about and think about not only child care problems, but transportation barriers. Because I now have to drop my kid off. I have transportation barriers. I have to go downtown, do a transfer to get to the child care center, come back downtown in the central hub, get to my job, which may be in Plano. That's the last mile. It only going to stop so far. And so who's going to be able to speak to that? Again, these are not your real life experiences. You can't do anything but listen. And I'm offering that voice for the least of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. I just think that there's a balance, you know, and everything. And so if you don't have a woman at the table, then it's going to be off balance.
We also know, if we're going to speak to it in a more granular space, it's one thing to be on a nonprofit board, which is funny. There's another thing, there's a gap in the corporate pay boards that we need women and more women and women of color.
I completely agree. Completely agree. And in closing, for all the little girls and young women out there, what advice would you have about exceeding expectations and having perseverance and just getting to the top?
Oh, yeah. So, I think for all the little girls and young women, I'd probably have my top 7.
Yeah. Okay.
And one would be, if I had to tell any little girl or any young woman, I would probably leave with, do not spend too much time on things that are good, that are preventing you from being great. Number 2, don't repeat the ridiculous. Number 3, it is not what you make, but it's what you keep. I'm a financial person. It's hard when you start the race from the back. Stay present in the moment. Don't join an easy crowd, you won't grow. Go where expectations and the demands to perform are high. And then lastly, always remember, life is about significance.
That's a word.
Yeah, it's a real word. It's about significance. I think sometimes we get lost in the journey of everything else and wanted to achieve and wanted to live here and be this and in this group and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's about significance. It's what's going to give you real joy, making a real impact and making a real.
Well, Michelle, you definitely make an impact every single day. Thank you so much again for that. Like you,
I mean, so many people and so many powerful women, yet you thought they're not fit to give me this opportunity. I'm grateful.
And like you said, especially you being, you know, a Dallas woman, you know, this is something I think I want, like you said, y'all women to see your story and you're tangible, like you're here, you know, you're down the street, you know what I mean? So born and raised. Absolutely. And so I just think it's important for them to know that if they can, something they can achieve. I know it sounds cliche, but yeah, that's why we're here.
So, yeah, appreciate you. You're wonderful. Absolutely.
All right.